willpower is not the answer to your problems. You're constantly being told by the people on self-improvement that you need to have willpower and to be disciplined in order to accomplish your goals and to make the change that you want. You know, force yourself through your emotions, your desires, and your habits. Use your discipline. But that's not totally correct. The problem is, if you focus entirely on your willpower being the way to make progress, you will make mistakes. You will lose progress. You will have wasted days. I recently had one of these situations where I was supposed to work on my YouTube channel, but just ended up scrolling on YouTube and looking at my script, but not doing anything with it, not writing anything. Even going as far as when I saw a good YouTube video, I pulled it up on my phone and laid down on my bed for like half an hour. This was when it was supposed to be a 90-minute work block. This did not make me feel very good, and it's easy to see why. So I tried to look up how I can actually use willpower to make myself successful, and I learned that willpower is not actually the solution, at least not the full solution. This is because willpower is a finite resource. This has been shown in many studies and experiments. In one study in particular, people were in a waiting room waiting to do an impossible puzzle. Of course, they didn't know it was impossible. One group in the waiting room had cookies, and the other group had beets. They were told not to eat them because these were for someone else. Now, the people that had cookies in the waiting room were actively using willpower to stop themselves, because who doesn't want a cookie while they're waiting and doing nothing? But beets, come on, who wants to eat that? And so the people that ate beets didn't have to expend any willpower at all. And so when they actually got into the experiment and were doing the impossible puzzle, the people that were in the cookie waiting room gave up on average much faster than the people that had beets in the waiting room. So if you apply this to life, if you're constantly using willpower to stop yourself from doing something bad, you're gonna have much less energy to accomplish your big goal than the other guy who doesn't have to constantly be using his willpower on not eating cookies. If you want to have a successful business, but you have to force yourself to wake up and eat healthy and drink water and work out and talk to your family, you're gonna give up much quicker than the guy who doesn't have to deal with all those desires. Because either those desires couldn't have taken place at all, or because he has good habits. I'll dive into those two topics a few minutes into the future. I've definitely seen this overuse of willpower in my own day-to-day life. Over that 3-day span I was talking about, I was either coming home from school, using a lot of willpower from my calculus class, coming home from work, where I needed to constantly stop myself from eating the horrendous foods filled with sodium and sugar there for free, or leg day, which, you know, always takes a lot of willpower to do. I'd always come home tired, and I remember even talking in one of my earlier videos about how I always need a Pepsi Zero when I came home because I just needed that kick of caffeine to keep going. I remember how my computer works is that it takes like 2 minutes for the Ethernet and internet to connect to the computer, and so during that time, I would just pull out my phone and then spend half an hour on YouTube before even touching my mouse. And then once I touch my mouse to, use my computer, the first tab I'm opening is YouTube to find the video to play while I'm opening all my other programs. Like what? And when I still played video games, which was, during freshman year, I still played video games, I'd open a video game too to wait for Premiere Pro to load. I'd open up Terraria to wait for Premiere Pro to load. That's insane. And then one time I just wasn't feeling the scripting, so I just closed out the scripting tab, minimized it, kept my computer on, and I just jumped on my bed and, did some YouTube doom scrolling. I had dreams of, being a successful YouTuber to help me in my business endeavors, where since I was like 7 years old, I wanted to have a giant space company where I did asteroid mining and I had a huge solar farm in order to give the Earth all its energy needs. How am I gonna be able to do any of that if I can't even script a YouTube video? So after all this, I knew something had to change. I began to research willpower. I saw Hamza's video first about discipline. He gave some advice. I ignored all of it, the huge. But then I researched how flawed willpower really is. It can be trained, similar to a muscle, but different in that going to failure is not the most ideal. Because if you go to true failure, you lose all self-control. It shouldn't necessarily be sought out to train. You'll get a lot by just living. Instead, the training comes when you are low on willpower and force yourself through your limited willpower to do something anyways. The most important part, however, is that you need to make structural changes for long-term success. In order to do this, you need to reduce your desires through environmental change, change your habits through specific narrowed focus, and become more stoic with your emotions. Okay, how are you gonna reduce your desires? So first, I'm gonna talk about junk food. So the number one thing you wanna do with junk food is to just get rid of it. I gotta go grab that. If there's no Doritos in your house, how are you gonna eat them? You may still crave Doritos, but how are you gonna give in to your desires if you have to go drive to like a store to get them? I don't know anyone who truly craves Doritos as much as to leave the house to go get them. So when you're at the store, just use your willpower one time to not buy those Doritos, and then you don't have to ever do it when you're at home. This goes for all bad food. Get the soda out of the house. Get the Chick-fil-A out of your neighborhood. Get the McDonald's, bomb that thing, bomb it. So that's the first one, remove bad nutrition from your house. Next is gonna be your desires with your phone. So we desire dopamine, lots of dopamine. You know what's the best at doing that? TikTok, Snapchat, Instagram, YouTube. All of these apps give you unlimited amounts of dopamine at the swipe of a finger. But we know in the frontal cortex where the willpower is, that's not the best thing for us. And so, in order to reduce the desires, you gotta delete the apps. Listen, if you think that's too crazy, I'm not gonna go in depth on this video. I have plenty of other videos where I tell you exactly why you need to delete the apps and how to actually accomplish it. All right, so that's the second thing, remove social media. And last thing, I guess, would be just like bad people from your life. So if you know you have a friend who is not a great influence on you and they don't have the same life goals as you, then you should progressively be with them less. I'm not saying to completely stop meeting with them, but to just like maybe remove them from best friend tier to like just a friend tier where you see them every once in a while. Because if they're a bad influence on you, then any time you spend with them is not going to be good for you. Maybe when you're with them, they just want to drink all the time, or they just want to play video games, or they just want to eat junk food. Not the type of person you want to be around. So the last thing is to remove time with the bad influences with you. So let me tell you about how I've personally dealt with all three of these things. So I absolutely love flaming hot Doritos or spicy Doritos. And so what I had to do is just tell my mom, please limit your spicy Dorito buying to as little as possible. And I was also a sucker for soda. 1 soda a day minimum. And so what I told my mom is, hey, can you just get sugar-free sodas from now on? Or just always get a sugar-free option for me. You can still have your regular Pepsi, but can you also buy a sugar-free Pepsi at the same time? Now, I don't even crave super sugary stuff, and I don't crave Doritos as often. When I see them in the cabinet, I always think, I could eat those. So, still, you don't ever want them in your house. To delete social media, I deleted all the apps. That was easy. But then I actually started using the web versions of all of them, and so what I had to do was go into screen time and go into the restrictions category and to the one with apps, games, and web apps. Then I specifically went to web restrictions and I limited adult websites. I didn't use adult websites, but the thing about it is that I was then able to ban specific sites. So I banned Instagram, TikTok, X, and I think that's it. I think those are the 3 big ones. Maybe Visco as well, because I was on that a while. So those 4 apps. And then I did have one friend who just had different goals than me, and so I just stopped talking to him. It also helped that I was during COVID, so it's not like I had to see him in school anymore. So yeah, after 8th grade, we just stopped talking. Next is your friendly neighborhood emotions. Emotions aren't all bad. In some places, they're good to have, and sometimes you should follow your emotions. But they shouldn't be controlling you and stopping you from your goals. I'm not gonna give you tips on how to remove emotions, but simply on how to control them better. And really, it's all through mindfulness. And mindfulness isn't just meditation, it's just simply being aware of the present moment and be aware of how you're feeling, what you're thinking, and about what's going on around you. So meditation's very helpful with this because the whole point of meditation is that you're stopping the thinking to just focus on something like your breathing. And so you're training yourself to stay in the present moment. Journaling's also really good for this because it takes you out of your living experience and going back into the past and writing about everything that happened. And then simply just doing nothing is also really good because you can just think about what's happening instead of just going. And all of this is to make it so you can be aware of when your emotions are driving you. When you notice your emotions are driving you, you need to take a step back and make sure that you're going on the right track here. Make sure that your anger or your sadness or your lust is not driving you. make sure your goals are driving you. So meditate, journal, and be aware. That's what you gotta do in order to control your emotions. I personally don't meditate. I journal maybe once a month, but I do pray twice a day, which in a way is like making me reflect on specific actions I've done, not my entire life, just things that I think are sinful. But I am very aware of what's happening, and so whenever I feel an emotion, I make sure to take a step back, maybe go to my journal to journal about it and make sure I can think logically, or just whenever I feel an emotion, it's time to take a step back. But just do that. That's the number one thing I can tell you. Just take a step back. Next is to change your habits. And we're gonna start off with the very first thing you need to do. You need to only focus on 1 to 2 habits at a time. You're gonna get some motivation, which we're gonna talk about later and how that can actually be dangerous. But you're gonna have motivation and you're gonna feel like, you know what? I'm gonna change my entire life right now. I'm gonna do 5 new habits. Get rid of the junk food. Get rid of the video games. Get rid of the social media. Start working out, start meditating every morning. You're gonna quit them all. In order to actually build successful habits, you need to be extremely self-controlled and just stay at 1, maybe 2 habits at a time. So if you're starting to work out, just focus on working out. Don't try to add a meditation too. Don't try to eat clean at the same time. Just focus on working out. And then once working out just becomes a normal thing for you, then move on to meditation and moving on to clean eating. It might take you like 2 to 3 months for each habit. But in 9 months, you can get 3 habits done versus you try to do all 3 of them at the same time and you get 0 done in 9 months. And then the next thing you have to do, and this is specifically for your bad habits, is to notice your triggers. So try to notice what happens before you go to your cabinet to go grab Doritos. Try and notice what happens before you go on an hour-long TikTok doom scrolling session. If you notice what triggers you to do these things, then you're gonna have the ability to remove those triggers or know beforehand, oh, I'm about to do this. I need to stop myself. So like a good plan to do is to say, I'm gonna start working out this week. I'm gonna focus on working out. And then as my second thing, I'm gonna notice that whenever I wanna eat Doritos, it's because I just spent an hour on TikTok beforehand. So I need to know that I need to control myself when I start scrolling on TikTok and know that I shouldn't eat something while I'm on TikTok. So for example, right now I'm focusing on clean eating. So my big habit now is that when I have a choice between an unhealthy meal and a healthier meal, I pick the healthier meal. And when I have the choice of meal prepping healthy meals in the future, I do that. I do the meal prep. And then I noticed that one of my triggers for YouTube scrolling was having like 1 or 2 minutes of free time before my next activity. And then what that would turn into is like, oh, I guess I'll just scroll on YouTube for a minute or 2. And then that minute or 2 turns into 20 minutes of scrolling. And so I've noticed that when I've got a minute or 2 to kill, I do nothing. And just the last thing, if you're feeling super productive, don't add a whole bunch of new habits you want to create. Just focus on 1 or 2. I'm telling you, if you try to add too many habits at once, you're gonna do 0. This is going to take a while. You are going to mess up many times, but now you know what must be done. Luckily, most of you are still pretty young, which I'll just say is under the age of 40, because that still means you have half your life left for most people. If you want to actually see sustained progress, you need to focus on removing as much of your motivations as possible, the good and the bad. Because if you give in to the good ones, you're also going to give in to the bad ones, most likely. Of course, there's some nuance here. I'm not exactly sure how much good you should give into, because I feel like if you want to like make a whole bunch of, say, YouTube scripts, keep going. Just make sure that you're giving into your desires in addition to your overarching goal. And just have good self-control when your desires do not mesh well with your overarching goal. In order to be successful with willpower, you have to be okay with doing nothing. I actually have a Streamy Awards winning video right here on why you need to do nothing and how you can be successful with it. And don't forget to control your environment, don't train your willpower, and think better. I'll catch you over in this video right here.